Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, November 5th, 2019, Election Day. Have you voted yet? Do you have an election going on in your area? Can you move to another area where they are having an election and quickly register and go vote? I don't know. I'm not certain what each jurisdiction allows for these things. Maybe a provisional ballot would be in order. But at any rate, if you live in a jurisdiction that has an election today, of course, make sure you're going. I think our audience is pretty tuned into that stuff. Think about moving to a jurisdiction that has an election today. Like I said, it's a fun thing to do, voting in off your elections. Keeps you on your toes. I haven't been yet, but they say you're supposed to have a plan to vote. And since I don't even have a plan for the show, at any rate, I'm going to make my plan to vote after the show. Or actually, my plan is to vote after the show. I could go beforehand, but that's when the lines are longest. And I like to stay out of the way of people who need to get somewhere else during the day in the morning. I just have to be here at the desk, and it would hold me up tremendously. So afterwards, I think I'll mosey on over. It's a big day for us locally. Of course, I'm in Virginia, so we have some significant elections going on statewide as well. The state legislature up for grabs, as Greg has reminded you. And as Greg has allowed Rachel Bidikofer to remind you several times since we began following her exploits via Twitter and MSNBC and everywhere else that you guys pick up her increasingly, increasingly strong signal. She's doing very well in the promotional category, and I'm glad to see it. It's really been interesting, actually, watching her I guess you could say struggle. I mean, I don't think she's I don't think she'd be averse to using the term when we're saying the struggle with balancing having a real life and a real professional life and being a television pundit and having kids and having to make sure that they're cared for, discovering in the same way that I did and a lot of other people before me and since then have, and certainly in much more intensive ways than I did, discovering that punditry is a lifestyle. You have to make a serious choice to concentrate on it. Now, it makes a great deal of sense for her to concentrate on it, not only because she's professionally tied up in the punditry that she's producing, and they go hand in hand, and so it makes a great deal of sense, but she's also got these fantastic resources behind her, which she worked to put behind her. It's not like she woke up one day and somebody said, here, be a professor of political science at an up-and-coming Virginia University, and, by the way, also acquire the skills that it takes to make accurate predictions on a brand new model of how legislative elections nationally are going to come out. She did that all by herself, got herself this job, but I think she's in this terrific position. But still, even so, being a professor of political science, having developed this terrific model, that's not enough. There are terrific professors of all sorts of sciences all over the place with fantastic models who, nonetheless, don't get the attention that their work deserves. You gotta make a conscious decision to put yourself out there and lobby your institution, probably, to make other resources available to you. Like, it would be a great idea, for instance, we mention this from time to time, that she works with the Wasson Center for Politics. I don't know what the actual full name of it is. It's Wasson, not Wason, Wason. I thought it might be Wason, like George Mason is here in Virginia, but it's Wasson. And this Center for Political Studies, I guess, is based at Christopher Newport University, where she works and teaches. And I think a good idea, I don't know if they've done this or not, but a fantastic idea would be for them to invest a little bit of money. For a university, it's only a little bit of money, in a television studio with satellite capability and a nice set, with some books, real or imagined, behind her, something like that. So you wouldn't have to drive all the way to the nearest NBC affiliates to do satellite uplinks to be interviewed on the Rachel Maddow show or something like that. She could go right there on campus. That's an easy thing to do if you are a university with like millions of dollars at your disposal. And anyway, so there's a good suggestion for you, Rachel. If they haven't done that already, I think that they ought to invest in that for you. It would be available to all of their other academic experts as well. There's no reason you would have to limit its use to just the Wasson Center folks. I don't know. I think that would make a great addition to the campus if they don't already have one. I've seen a couple other Christopher Newport University professors interviewed on various subjects from time to time as well. I'm sure they could all make use of it. Anyway, like I said, it's been real interesting watching her balance. If you're watching her on Twitter, and you ought to, you get not only the analysis, but from time to time reminders of what does it take to be the mother of not toddlers at the moment. They're older kids. I think her oldest, if I've gleaned the information correctly from her Twitter feed, her oldest is maybe a freshman in college now, and her youngest seems to be like maybe middle school age or something like that, which is not that far off from where my own kids are. My youngest is a freshman in high school, and my oldest freshman in college. So, he was just last year, the younger one in middle school. So I get the point. But it's interesting watching her deal with the reality of, hey, I have to be on, at a television studio at some point to give my election prediction, but I've got a kid who needs to get to whatever, I don't know, whether soccer practice, or somebody's got to watch him and give him breakfast in the morning, or I have to get him to school and pack his lunch, but I'm supposed to be punditing somewhere else. And, it's a tough gig. I certainly went through that myself, and it's even harder from where I am to reach studios, let's say. It's a considerable drive, traffic nightmares, et cetera, and it became very obvious very quickly that wasn't going to be my priority in life. And, of course, I didn't have to give them everything that Rachel Bidikofer has to give them. I could only comment on various and sundry things, but I didn't have my own election prediction modeling to offer up. But it became clear pretty quickly that it was going to be a major pain in the butt for producers to get me to a television studio for 2 minutes of telling them, what they could probably get from any number of other people as well. And far less rejections from me saying, I can't, it's Cub Scouts and I got to go to that. Or, I could make other arrangements if you gave me notice ahead of time. But that's the lifestyle of the pundit. That's what we're talking about here, is you have to be prepared to, at the drop of a hat, if producers actually still wear hats, if you get a call at 6:30 in the morning that they need you in the studio for a 7:15 live shot, you got to make it to Washington, D.C., New York, wherever you happen to be, and be ready to do that. Show up in a suit so you look like a respectable pundit and they listen to you. Doesn't matter what you have to say. Doesn't matter how smart you are. Doesn't matter how correct you are. How many times you've been proven right. If you don't look like a pundit, it won't work. And, you got to be able to do that and say somebody else is going to have to get the kids to school or pick them up or make the dinner, whatever. So you got to have a cooperative partner in all of that, and the behind the scenes part of punditry, or you got to have no responsibilities, or you just don't care at all about your responsibilities and you can just do what you like. How about that? That's a possibility. All right, let's see. Let's catch up on things and get the show started here at long last. Hang on just a moment while I straighten things out around the microphone, just to make sure everything's in the right place. And all right, let's see. Our friend, the Street Warlock, wants to know, do we have any thoughts on which party I will be voting for? I love parties, as you know, and it's always fun to be invited to a party. I have a pretty good idea of what I'll be doing, yes. A large part of my ballot today is supposedly party blind. That's pretty interesting. The legislative races designate their candidates by D's and R's and such, but everywhere else we pretend that they are nonpartisan positions, even though the people running for them are partisan in many cases through and through. So that's something to watch out for if you're heading out to vote today. Get yourself a sample ballot. Take a look at the website of your official elections, Election Central, whatever you may call it in your state or commonwealth, as the case may be. Find out who's on the ballot. Find out about those ballot questions. And you might have to even do some research, like here in our corner of Virginia, voting for school board or soil and water conservation board, etc. There really are Democrats and Republicans running for those, but they don't designate their party on the ballot because they're supposed to be nonpartisan positions. But how do you get somebody to say, yes, I will stand for election to the Soil and Water Conservation District? And the answer, generally speaking, is that you have to, you gotta go to a party meeting somewhere and they say, look, we're supposed to, or people are supposed to run for Soil and Water Conservation District. Anybody want to do that? Raise your hand. We'll nominate you, for our party purposes. For the ballot purposes, they don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. They won't even ask. But we gotta put some names under. Anyone want to do it? And people are organized for nominating people for various offices. So they're in that mode, and that's how you get yourself nominated for local office. School board, same thing. We have, other elected some county-wide elections going on as well, where Democrats and Republicans aren't designated on the ballot for treasurer and controller of the whatever it is. I don't know what they call the position anymore. It's controller of revenue or something like that. And I had to look it up. Who's who in all this? It's tough sledding. Just because you don't get to just sit on your butt and watch television and have the answers show up in between your favorite programs. So, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing on that front. Made sure I got all of that information and sorted it all out, so I'm pretty much ready to go. All right, time, though, for us to dive into the national politics that we all know and love and crave. There's lots going on today. Bill has tweeted at me already about Daily Kos Radio being live. We're, like 15 minutes into it. And what's on my schedule, according to Bill? Well, Kagro X, me, David Waldman, reminds you that today is Election Day 2019, true. Also Guy Fawkes Day, as it turns out. It's also National Donut Day, I see, being announced, oddly enough, by TSA. I didn't really think I could look to them for this reminder, but they are talking about it being National Donut Day and reminding everybody, don't worry about it. It's you can, in fact, bring donuts through TSA security. And this is a good point. Even the cream and jelly filled ones, which, now with like the 3-ounce liquid rule thing, I guess there's an exemption for donuts. I don't know if it goes beyond National Donut Day, but I can tell you, if you A, knew it was National Donut Day, B, got yourself a donut, particularly the most delicious kind, the free ones, and it happens to be filled with more than 3 ounces of jelly, you can still bring it with you on the plane. Do take care, though, that you don't get a donut that is too obnoxious smell-wise, and most of them will probably be okay, but there's some weird donuts out there, and you know how people are on the plane, and it's rude and obnoxious to bring really smelly food with you. I took the Acela train over the weekend to New York, and though they have a quiet car, they need since everybody loves to be sensitive to everyone else's sensitivities, I need a smell-free, a scent-free car. So many just lovely lunches that people had brought with them, and the aroma of 17 different kinds of grain bowls was really amazing, in the bad sense. Anyway, right, I was saying it's Guy Fawkes Day as well as Election Day, and because it's a day ending in Y, Bill tells us, in the Trump household, it's inappropriately grab people's boobs from behind day. This is true. It's a 2-day festival, apparently. This having started yesterday. Did you happen to see that? One of the strangest things I've ever seen, and I guess the best way of describing what went on was some portion of the Washington Nationals, who have just won the World Series, attended the White House reception in their honor, and many more of them did not, boycotted the event. Among those who went, the focal point of the Twitter discussion of the event was Kurt. Is that right? Is his first name Kurt Suzuki? I think that's correct. And you can see I'm a huge Nats follower. Catcher for the Nationals, and he decided to. I don't know what you would say about it exactly, but he decided to don a MAGA hat for the event, which is a little controversial. You're supposed to stick to sports, remember all of that kind of thing. I didn't see anybody complaining about that, by the way. Anyway, he got up at the podium, having been called there by the president, put the hat on, made some remarks, inoffensive remarks, I think, in general. I don't know. All I really was concentrating on was the video clip of Trump saying, about the hat. I love this guy, I love it. Don't you love him? Whatever. And he walks up behind him. And the explanation offered for this by the White House was that he was hugging Suzuki, presumably because he had been pro-Trump enough to wear a MAGA hat. But Trump has an odd way of expressing his feelings of affection with hugs, I guess. He's got one default setting. I think I did see someone tweeting it out as, it's like the guy has one, he's only got one setting when it comes to making physical contact with people. He had his hands on Suzuki's shoulders and was, giving him a nice, I guess what you would call a nice, inoffensive, semi-embrace from behind him by, grabbing his shoulders. That would have done the trick. Everyone would have clearly understood that to have been an embrace of sorts. But instead he says he was going to hug him, and he puts his arms around Suzuki's torso from behind, which, okay, even that is like, all right, for a president and a baseball player, it's a little out of order, but okay, fine. You can wrap your arms around, and then you could kind of grab towards your elbows and give somebody a hug if you wanted to. But Trump's mode of contact with people from that position is to, and this is what he did. He just slid his hands up around, and he basically grabs Suzuki from behind as though he were cupping the boobs of a woman he would be assaulting at Studio 54 or something like that. But he did it with this baseball player who appeared to take it in stride, but it wasn't just something that you could catch in an awkward second with a still photo. There was a little video clip of it, and he's consciously making that move, and then he removes himself relatively quickly, and Suzuki doesn't even deck him or give him an elbow or anything. But that's because he's, secure in his, maybe Kurt Suzuki is perfectly secure in his sexuality and didn't mind that much. I don't know, but it was a clear reminder of what is wrong with Donald Trump and how odd he is and how far away he remains from normal humanity. It's really one of the most remarkable things, remarkable tells I've seen in a long time from him. So very disturbing and weird, and I just thought I would share that with you. Now, there are many other important stories that we can get to, and I do want to make sure I leave time today because it's election day. I have the latest installation of Eric Postman's, Eric in Orlando, as he likes to introduce himself, Eric's Senate Snippet series. It isn't election day for the Senate, of course, but it is election day in the gubernatorial race in Kentucky. And today's Senate Snippet focuses on Kentucky, the relatively long shot, but still amazingly fun to think about contest against Mitch McConnell. And, the outcome of the governor's race in Kentucky might give us some indication about what the odds are for that race. Let's say, I think probably the smart thing to do is to save that for after the break and head instead over to some of the more interesting national political articles. Finally, I can get around to some of those things. Let me make sure I've got an eye on Twitter things here as well so that I can watch everybody's input here. Oh, in fact, the second comment from Street Warlock. Does the Virginia Dem Party still hand out sample ballots? Sure they do. And as a matter of fact, when I took my older son to cast his in-person absentee ballot when he was home from college last, they handed us a county-wide Democratic roster, if you will, so that you could find out, depending on where you lived in the county, you could find out who had been endorsed, I guess, at the very least, by county Republicans, even if they weren't running or county Democrats, rather, if they weren't running as a Democrat because it was a nonpartisan race. So for the most part, yes, and I will comment, for local Democrats, the Loudoun County Democratic Party has, in the past several years, done a fantastic job in finding enough volunteers to they need more, of course, but finding volunteers to, I said man, but we mean provide personnel, let's say, of all sorts, to hand out election literature at the polling places. It's been a long, long time since I have not been offered Democratic literature on my way to the polls, whereas it has been a long time since I got Republican literature. I tend to go in the middle of the day when the crowds are the lightest, and they might consider it lowest priority, but there has never not been a Democrat there, but has very frequently not been a Republican, which is a relatively new thing in my area. So kudos to the volunteers for the Virginia Democratic Party and the Loudoun County Democratic Party in particular. They've been doing a fantastic job, and one of these days I have to pick up the ball and make sure that I join you out there. Let's see, and on another important note on National Donut Day, a note from Canada, as Brian Monroe sends us this one. Do you have your own National Donut Day, or is it every day is Donut Day in Canada? Canada, I am told, from this screen cap he sent me, consumes the most donuts and has the most donut shops per capita of any country in the world. Reason enough, I think, to emigrate for us. And although I will say I was terribly sorry to hear about the incredibly elevated levels of lead recently found in some Canadian water systems, I was surprised to learn over dinner last night, as my wife was reading about this situation, that Canada has no national standards on water quality. The country, and as far as the article put it anyway, being known for its, abundant fresh water resources. I don't know whether they ever thought they never needed to test for these things or what, but among developed countries in the world, apparently it's like the only one that doesn't have some sort of national standards or regulation of drinking water, testing requirements. I'm not sure exactly how it was put, but I guess I would put odds on them remedying that pretty quickly. That's kind of embarrassing. I'm sure they'll help, and I hope they'll do a much better job. I bet they would do a much better job of cleaning up and remedying the situation than we've done in Flint, Michigan, for instance. Okay. But yes, thank you for reminding us of that, Brian. I know that wasn't what you meant to remind us of, Brian, but you gave us something to talk about nonetheless. Note to self about finding the Canadian water articles. Okay. Scott, you can help remind me. What was I thinking of before? And maybe you even have some on hand. In the meantime, I will read you this entertaining entry from the Daily Beast, written by Will Sommer. Trump fans are so mad at Matt Drudge. How mad are they? They are so mad that they're trying to make a MAGA rival to, I guess, what they're calling his, quote, left-wing site. How do you like that? Boy, they really are some interesting snowflakes over there. The president's supporters are furious at the aggregation king. Now upstart rivals want a piece of the action. And that's the biggest pastime on the right, is insisting that they are going to build a new right-leaning alternative to something that they perceive as left-wing. Pardon me. Whether it is or not. Anyway, in this case, it's not, but they're going forward nonetheless. So let's take some entertainment from this. Donald Trump fans have been fuming for weeks at conservative mega aggregator Matt Drudge, alleging that his Drudge report has backed Democrats' impeachment push and ignored GOP arguments in favor of the president. In point of fact, he is rather right-leaning, I think, Drudge himself, but I'm sure he's focusing on the impeachment situation for its splashiness and entertainment value more than anything else. Anyway, they're very angry with him, and now, as a measure of their dissatisfaction, would-be internet media moguls are looking to make it big by creating Drudge Report clones and potentially stealing his visitors. Please, by all means, take them. The owners of the conservative Drudge-style aggregator sites with names like News Ammo, Rantingly, Liberty Daily, and Whatfinger, I'm not even sure what that's supposed to mean, say they have seen traffic booms since outspoken conservatives began accusing Drudge of an anti-Trump bias. Gab, remember them? They're still around. The social media network popular with white supremacist extremists recently launched its own Drudge-style news aggregator site, gabtrends, amid discontent from Trump supporters with Drudge. So you hate to see it, ladies and gentlemen, but it is happening, and I'm glad we were able to keep an eye on it through Daily Beast here. I guess we'll take it right up to the break. It's what the internet is talking about right now, Gab founder Andrew Torba told the Daily Beast in an email. Not what Matt Drudge thinks the internet should be talking about right now, or what they should be talking about right now. I put the emphasis there. It's unclear how much traffic any of the Drudge knockoff sites are receiving, although none of them appears to be getting anywhere near Drudge's site, which received more than 80 million visitors in September, according to similar web figures. I guess they might be trustworthy. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal. Except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I think, honestly, I'm skimming over the rest of the Daily Beast piece here. I don't mean to shortchange Will Sommer or anything, but, the news is that Trump fans are mad at Drudge, and so they are thinking of launching already launched conservative alternatives to the Drudge site, and I expect, like everything else that they've done along these lines, they'll struggle on and exist. I think Conservapedia still exists, technically speaking, but there's nothing particularly interesting about it except you might find it fun at some point to read the complaints of the various conservatives quoted in here and laugh at their snowflakeness. Let me just briefly mention another similar snowflake-type incident that I just saw Armando tweet about. Let's see, they're just sort of laughing and just, LOL retweeting along with this from Alex Thompson, who, look at this, covering 2020, the left and Elizabeth Warren, as if they were different things. But they are. She's not the left anyway. But, that's the beat for Alex Thompson for Politico. And he follows as well. So if I were to retweet Armando's retweet of his retweet, he would see that, and then I don't know what would happen. Part of the universe, I think, would disappear. Anyway, the story, briefly enough, Citrus County commissioners, and I think we're talking about Florida. Where else would there be a Citrus County? Citrus County commissioners call New York Times fake news, deny library funding for digital subscriptions. So we're at that stage of, post normalcy, I suppose. And the all-male, all-white board, I guess, is represented here in this photo. I don't know if there are more than just the 5 members, but all white men and all in relatively cheap-looking suits, letting us know that because the New York Times is fake news, they are prohibiting their local library from subscribing to it. And there you have it. So if you are a school kid in Citrus County, Florida, and you need to do a research paper, you're going to have to leave the county. And parents, you might as well leave the county as well and enroll your kids, move to a county where your kids can get a decent education, because Citrus County, it ain't happening. Just thought I'd put that out there. I mean, that's a pretty serious thing to do. I mean, it's deeply unserious to actually execute that as policy, is what I mean. But it will have a serious impact on people in the county. And, what do they care? I'm judging 5 books by their covers, and I would say they are 5 comic books, as a matter of fact. I'm guessing that education, not really a super high priority for these guys, just by looking at them. I might be wrong. They may all be PhDs and geniuses and Nobel laureates for all I know, but I'll tell you what I'm not going to do is spend any more time looking into their educational backgrounds. I'll just say what they've done here is wrong, and we are correct about that. Okay, moving on then. Let me flip back and keep the Twitter flowing here so that we can watch for big news or watch for news that we'll miss because we're reading other things. All right, one thing I ought to do, why not? This is as good a time as any. We have a nice long stretch ahead of us, is bring you Eric's Senate snippet on Kentucky. Once again, that balloting not being done there, but they are voting for governor and numerous other things, presumably as well, in Kentucky. I can't keep up on the elections everywhere. I can barely keep up on my own. But let me roll this and remind you, as he does, one of the reasons I appreciate his contributions, not just because it helps fill airtime, but I appreciate these contributions in particular. You should feel a little twinge of guilt, as I do, when you hear them and he reminds you, look, as much fun as it is to focus on Trump and his idiocy and how much we all hate him, and it's good for motivating voters and getting them to the polls. I'm taking that lesson from Rachel Bidikofer there. It's okay to it's preferred to nationalize elections, as she puts it. So by all means, let Trump motivate you to get to the polls, but never lose sight of the fact that the Senate elections are extraordinarily important. And what we're going to do with Trump, if we're stuck with him again through another one of these fraudulent elections, or even if we're not, even if we manage to defeat him and take over the Senate and hold a House majority, there's a million things we need to get done, I would maintain, including impeaching Donald Trump, even if he's not in office, which is, as a longtime listener, still possible. Extraordinarily important to do many, many, many other very important things, and the judiciary just one among them. So let me just get to it here and let Eric remind you on his way to updating you on what's happening in Kentucky.
Good morning, David. It's Eric in Orlando. As 2020 comes hurtling at us like a meteor storm, the more we react to daily updates on impeachment and the horse race for president, we don't want to take our eye off the ball and the absolutely crucial task of retaking the Senate. This is episode 4 in the Senate Snippet series for anxious activists. 4 is a critical number because that's how many seats as of now that need to be net gains to exert power over cabinet and judicial appointments and the bulk of all legislation. In the first 3 episodes, we made the case that Susan Collins in Maine is especially gettable, that Lindsey Graham is on unusually shaky ground in South Carolina, and that Montana is even in play. Now batting fourth, like any good cleanup hitter, we might as well swing for the fences and knock Mitch McConnell out of the box in Kentucky. This, needless to say, will be no easy task. It's not because McConnell is invulnerable. His favorability is in the tank in his home state, and there are plenty of hashtag brigades out there pinning a target on his back. I've seen hashtag ditch Mitch and hashtag get Mitch or die trying, and there's the always present unflattering hashtag Moscow Mitch. That's definitely shaken his soul, the first evidence that he may have one. But McConnell is the rare Senate candidate who may not only survive a blue wave, but can actively work to diminish or redirect it, because the ball will soon be in his court on impeachment, and when it comes to channeling political force, there are very few that are better at it. Take the instincts of Nancy Pelosi and the scruples of Dick Cheney, and combine it with the power of his position, and he will no doubt twist every tactical advantage out of this situation. And every option is on the table. Unlike Trump, McConnell isn't just playing the base. If impeachment means a show trial or a real one, it's unlikely he'll pick the less advantageous option. He may let certain senators vote to convict, should it save their chances in competitive states. There may even be a chance he'd throw Trump overboard himself if that tilted the odds to keeping the Senate and retaining his seat. It's highly unlikely but not impossible. As fast as these news cycles turn, Mitch McConnell could be hailed by the New York Times as a post-partisan hero, and the mainstream media would forget all about Merrick Garland. But however McConnell plays it, we know that he has the survival skills of a cockroach. When he was last up for re-election in 2014, he seemed vulnerable then, too. The Democrats even had star power as popular actor-activist Ashley Judd threw her name in the ring to unseat McConnell. But that ended almost as soon as it started, after the incumbents team quickly and viciously attacked her mental fitness. Judd backed out. Even after that, McConnell was thought to have a competitive race against Allison Lundgren Grimes, Kentucky's Democratic Secretary of State, but he won convincingly by 15 points. That was the last election in which the Senate changed hands, and McConnell ascended to majority leader. Now in 2020, McConnell will be 77 years old when he runs for a 7th term, and barring a health issue or a surprise retirement or resignation, forced by unmanageable political headwinds, he will return to the ballot as both vulnerable and formidable. I'd bet on the latter, but 2020 is far from a sure thing. The popular name circulating as his general election opponent is 44-year-old Amy McGrath, a lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps, former fighter pilot. You all may recall the name from the 2018 election cycle. She was one of the most visible of the Democratic military/intelligence wave candidates, as she took on 3-term incumbent Andy Barr in Kentucky's 6th district, which includes Lexington, Kentucky. On paper, McGrath outpaced expectations, losing by 3 points in a district that Trump won by 16 2 years earlier. And even though she didn't win, her name recognition took off, both in Kentucky, to build a constituency, and nationally, to build a war chest. She raised $3.5 million in the first week after she announced her intention to run for Senate. So now she has the time and the money to go along versus McConnell. But she is short on political chops. In one of her first interviews after announcing her Senate run, she said she would have voted to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. We don't know what she actually would have done, but it seemed like an obvious pander to her home state electorate, and it made her progressive allies furious. She immediately walked back her remarks on Kavanaugh, but it's an indicator that McGrath may be finding her political footing, which isn't going to be an asset as she goes one-on-one against one of the shrewdest and most devious operators in history. Another name that pops up to take a shot at McConnell is more of a household name in his home state. It's Kentucky sports radio host Matt Jones. Being able to be inside the all-encompassing Kentucky basketball program and speak fluently about it to many white conservative sports fans gives him a strong foothold in the state. His radio program is syndicated to 35 stations throughout Kentucky, and he built a base of nearly 200,000 Twitter followers before he formed an exploratory committee to run for Senate this past summer. His reach has built access to the power players in Kentucky politics, as he has emceed that offbeat fancy farm picnic, the annual Kentucky get-together that is part state fair and part political roast. But he didn't host the event this year, the one where McConnell took to the stage to take potshots at Amy McGrath, calling her McGaff, thinking he was nailing her on the Kavanaugh flip-flop. But McConnell didn't foresee Kentucky Democrats wearing Cossack hats, waving Russian flags, and chanting Moscow Mitch while he was up there. It was a rare public humiliation for McConnell, who was famous for his political calculus. Perhaps he shouldn't have traded a relationship with a Russian aluminum magnate/oligarch for a few hundred Kentucky jobs. Or maybe he should have. If he's questioning his own machinations, I suppose that's ultimately a good thing. While Kentucky is known as the Big Blue Nation for their fanaticism with Kentucky basketball, it isn't a completely red state. In fact, 8 of the last 10 Kentucky governors have been Democrats. And in a certain barometer for McConnell's re-election hopes, and maybe 2020 as a whole, the Kentucky governor race is imminent. It's Tuesday, November 5th. Incumbent Matt Bevin, who many describe as a Trump wannabe, is an easy boogeyman for the left and an easy target for rank-and-file Kentuckians. He's cut Medicaid, tried to outlaw abortion, and denied asylum to refugees. He'll be challenged by 41-year-old Andy Beshear, the state's attorney general and son of former Governor Steve Beshear. The political winds have shifted in Kentucky. Beshear, the Democrat, leads in most polls, and the Cook Political Report lists the race as a toss-up. But it's an off-year election, so anything is possible. And for those who want to ditch Mitch, this governor's race will certainly be an excellent indicator. The self-appointed Grim Reaper of legislation may be facing his own political mortality, spotting a hooded robe and scythe in his own mirror. And while we're a long way from McConnell being a dead man walking, we can certainly see a scenario where after 6 terms he's finally out. Maybe the 7th time will finally be the charm, and we'll no longer have to fear the Reaper.
That would be fantastic news. Thanks very much, Eric, for that insight into the Kentucky races. Please, by all means, keep it up and keep, at the very least, reminding us how extraordinarily important it is to turn our focus back somewhat more locally every once in a while. So thanks so much for keeping us up to date on that stuff. By the way, I guess other election news for the day. Kate Sherrill tweeting me yesterday. I thought I would bring up this very interesting point. She says, as you know, Indiana has a very stringent voter ID law. And about 3 p.m. yesterday, the BMVs, they use a Bureau of Motor Vehicles there, not a division or department of motor vehicles. Various states sometimes go with DMV, but their Motor Vehicles Bureau, the systems went down yesterday. So there very well may have been many people making last-minute visits to make sure that they have voter ID law compliant identification issued by the BMV there in Indiana, who were unable to get access to the ID that they would need to cast their votes today. So they had to close all the branches for several hours early on in the day and may not be able to reopen today, Election Day. So we'll have to see what's news on that front. That's pretty amazing. And some screen caps, I guess, of the Twitter account of the Indiana BMV, letting everybody know that that was the case. Yesterday by 4:18 p.m., they were still tweeting, branches currently unable to process customer transactions. We will update this notice as the situation changes. We apologize for any inconvenience. Here is a Twitter user and Indiana resident tweeting afterwards, hopefully, or I guess, is she an employee of the place or what? I'm not sure. But Renee Larson tweeting, have extended hours. Is that I can't tell whether that's them saying we have extended hours or you should have extended hours to assist those trying to get IDs for Election Day tomorrow. I hope that they were able to get things back up and running and people aren't facing that problem. Fingers crossed on that one. Yes, and as a matter of fact, Kate also, I've got a backup of Kate Sherrill articles, some very interesting ones to share with you. This one, I think, directly relevant to hot news of the day. I did see this, and I think I put it away in pocket somewhere. Judd Legum onto yet another fascinating story that he's dug out of nowhere. And by way of alerting us to it, he tweets this update, or tweeted it. I guess this one's from this morning. Last week, I asked the Trump campaign for the winners of the 15 contests they've held. I think I put I certainly retweeted this thing yesterday. He, out of nowhere, essentially discovered that over the years, the Trump campaign, like many other campaigns, has offered up the opportunity to win a meal, a dinner with Trump or a lunch with Trump or something like that, where, I don't know, I guess you make I don't know whether you actually have to make a donation in order to be eligible, but they're certainly encouraging you to do that. Donate money and you'll be entered for a chance to win lunch or dinner, or I don't know, maybe they even raffled off breakfast with Donald Trump. And, you see these things all the time, but I guess, usually you assume that no campaign would be so brazen as to simply be offering this opportunity and then not follow up on it. For one thing, it's advantageous to them to have voter contact with supporters and to put out press releases and photos and say, next time it could be you, that sort of thing. They would have every interest in showing how frequently they've actually done this and who won and what they did and, et cetera, et cetera. Judd was tweeting yesterday that they've done this 15 times since 2018, offering a chance to win breakfast, lunch, or dinner with President Trump, and an investigation by Popular Information, which is to say by Judd. This is his newsletter, Popular Information. Their investigation didn't uncover evidence that anyone has ever actually won. Very interesting, and I'm pretty sure I had put the article away, but just in case I can click through here. But he's got a whole thread on this thing. The last contest winner was supposed to have lunch a week ago in Chicago. The pool reporter with Trump that day, Washington Post reporter Ann Guerin, asked the campaign for any information about the winner. She didn't receive a response. These kinds of contests, as he points out, are a staple of modern presidential campaigns. Most campaigns are eager to show their candidate interacting with real people. Obama's dinners generated extensive coverage. The Trump campaign, curiously enough, I would add, has never released a name or a picture. And here is a list of every contest for a meal with Trump that the campaign has held since 2018, a list he put together himself. Even if the Trump campaign didn't publicize these meals, you'd think someone would get coverage in their local paper. And here they are. They're all listed here. And I guess in all cases, no photo posted to Twitter about the dinner and no information whatsoever about the winner. Going all the way back to February of 2018, when the prize was dinner with Trump in Florida. Since then, there's been a dinner in North Carolina, dinner in New York, dinner in Texas, lunch in Wisconsin, another dinner in New York, breakfast in Florida, dinner in Ohio, dinner in Los Angeles, dinner in D.C., dinner in Ohio, lunch in New York, dinner in California, breakfast in New York, and a lunch with Trump in Chicago was the last one. The date ranges, the contest dates during which the contest was promoted via email, also noted there. So, like it says, 15 times. No information about any winners, no pictures of any of the meals. There is a year before the next election, he, of course, reminds us. And also, I guess the rest of this tweet here is a pitch to join in supporting his work. And he's doing fantastic work. He's done a number of really interesting and creative investigations. I absolutely would recommend supporting his work. And this is just the latest. Again, a very interesting and creative idea for a story. But he's also done great work, in particular, in hounding the social media sites over their content policies and who they're going to ban and who they'll allow and what sorts of content they allow and what sorts of comments they will ban you for, et cetera, what sorts of advertising they will and won't accept. And he's been doing great work in trying to keep them honest. I don't know if I could say he's been successful in keeping them honest, but that's on them, not on him. Anyway, the article itself on the contest, I think, is pretty readily available. Here we go. The Trump campaign has held at least 15 contests since 2018, offering the chance to win breakfast, lunch, or dinner with Trump. Supporters are enticed to donate to Trump's campaign with promises of free travel, accommodations, and an, quote, epic meal with Trump at various locations across the country. An investigation by Popular Information, however, did not uncover evidence that anyone has ever actually won. It's not like they were stealing the donations, of course. I don't think they'll be in trouble for that. But I don't know what authorities are even capable of making trouble for them over this. It's just, I guess, the press embarrassing them. So good work there for Judd. Let's see. There's lots of other examples of other campaigns doing it. Elizabeth Warren, for example, has, I've seen the ads for these things. One of the few political ads I've seen in social media, grab a beer or whatever, I think they say, with Elizabeth, et cetera, et cetera. So, and Elizabeth Warren's campaign has been pretty good about following up with who's the winner and photos of Elizabeth Warren enjoying either a beverage or a meal with those people. Jeb Bush did the same during his 2016 campaign. There's the photo. The tactic was popularized, he says, by former President Obama. I don't know how much detail we really need to get on that. It's just sort of interesting. The new news here, I guess, begins down here. The search for a winner in the Windy City. Last Monday, Trump was supposed to have lunch with a contest winner in Chicago. Numerous Facebook ads promised people who donate to his campaign a, quote, VIP trip and an, quote, epic meal. Here are the tweets in which this was promoted, including tweets directly from the Donald J. Trump, Twitter feed. Is it are these on Twitter or are these on Facebook? I can't really actually tell. But at any rate, there are 4 here, and they're pretty much say exactly what you would think they would say. Donate now for a double entry to win an epic meal with Donald Trump. And, it's a pretty good bet, honestly, if you don't know anything else about the situation. Would Donald Trump honor or back out of the opportunity for a meal, even if it was with a regular person? And you would think there's a pretty good chance he'd show up. But, of course, he can get a meal anywhere he goes without effort, doesn't need you in order to do it. So I guess that's what he did. He went and had those meals, and you had a meal. It didn't say you were going to have it in the same city or same room even. So doesn't that fit the bill? Anyway, the contest was also heavily promoted over email. I just saw the most recent lists of patriots who have contributed to win a trip to meet me in Chicago on October 28th. And I noticed you still haven't entered, Trump, quote unquote, wrote in an October 22nd email. We'd hate for you to miss out. You hate to see it. You hate to see it when people miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have lunch with President Trump at his favorite hotel in Chicago. Although this is actually the campaign speaking at this point. Anyway, on Monday 28th, the day that Trump was traveling to Chicago, Judd contacted Ann Gearan, the Washington Post reporter who was traveling with Trump on behalf of the press, the role informally known as the pooler or the press pool. And he asked her if she'd heard anything about the contest winner having lunch with Trump. She hadn't, but she put in a request for information with the Trump campaign and the White House. She included her request in the pool report. And it's quoted here. Note, Poole asked but has not received info from either the campaign or the White House about the results of a contest for lunch with the president at this event. We'll pass along anything I get. Gearan never passed along any information, and I confirmed with her that she never received any either. Where are these 15 winners? Well, they're unable to turn up any of them. Last week, Popular Information contacted Matt Wolking, Deputy Director of Communications for the Trump campaign, requesting the names of contest winners and or photos of the meal. No response. Trump campaign did send out a text message about a new contest to have lunch with him in Atlanta, though. Trump is scheduled to visit Atlanta for a fundraiser on November 8th. The tight turnaround raises questions about whether such a meal is realistically possible. As of Sunday, November 3rd, entries to the contest are still open. Even if the contest ended Sunday, this leaves the Trump campaign just 4 days to select the winner, arrange logistics, and presumably vet the winner for security and public relations purposes. All right. Let's see. Another section here wrapping things up. A mysterious meal in March. Most contests run by the Trump campaign follow a pattern. Messages over email and Facebook, promoting a meal with Trump at a location that Trump will be visiting soon. But for several weeks in August and September of 2018, the Trump campaign bought hundreds of Facebook ads about the contest for dinner with Trump with no designated location. This contest, unlike the others, does not appear to be promoted over email, but like all other contests, there was no announced winner. Now, is it a scam? Is the last section here. Are these contests which promise a meal with Trump a scam? Is the Trump campaign swindling its own supporters? We don't know. In one respect, failing to go through with the meals makes little sense. The estimated value of each meal, including transportation and accommodations, is about $3,000. That's the estimate they're going with. For a campaign that's raising tens of millions of dollars every quarter, this is a pittance. But this is a campaign that has been willing to scam its supporters before. As Popular Information documented in May, the Trump campaign held a campaign to give away the 1 millionth MAGA hat signed by Trump. On May 23rd, the Trump campaign ran a Facebook ad claiming that the deadline to enter was midnight. It ran that same ad claiming a midnight deadline for 12 days, May 23rd through June 4th. Here, he lists all the dates. I don't know if there are any days that get skipped. Oh, yes, they didn't run it on May 26th for whatever reason. So there you have it. That's the one day they skipped. Anyway, here the Trump campaign is telling an obvious lie to its supporters about a midnight deadline to gain a small advantage. Falsely claiming a deadline was midnight likely encouraged people to enter at a higher rate. Is the Trump campaign failing to follow through on its meal contests to save a few $1,000s and save Trump some time? I need your help to find out. The update as of this morning. After the publication of this article, the Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh responded, claiming that, quote, people win the contests each time. Murtaugh offered no proof to support this claim. Well, that's usually the case. They very rarely do support anything with any proof. Speaking of which, I guess that gives me an idea of what we can pick up on when we come back from this short 1-minute break. Another one of those, hey, there's no proof situations going on. This one having to do with the latest unhinged rant on Fox News Channel by a commentator I've never heard of before, but raising some hackles right there in the studio, actually attacking his colleagues in the middle of his rant. Should be pretty interesting. We'll follow up with that after this. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. Got to have that button on in order for the volume to go through. Okay, let's see. I mentioned just before our short little break that there was this weird situation on one of the Fox News shows. I guess the clip itself is too long to play, but I have the Daily Beast's write-up of this thing here, and I spent a little bit of time just sort of tweeting about this yesterday. I thought everybody should have a look at this, but let me see if I can scroll back and find the thing. First, I got to get to the right setting on the Twitter feed here, but the show itself, I don't know anything about. I never watched, there's no reason for me to be watching Fox News. There are many people who are professionally in the business of watching it, so I don't have to. But let's see. I think I first caught wind of this. Here's the tweet I saw from Justin Baragona, I guess. He's a contributor at the Daily Beast, and found this thing and tweeted out, wow, Fox News host Steve Hilton. Are you familiar with this guy? I'm not. Straight up accuses his Fox News colleague Marie Harf, H-A-R-F, of covering up the corruption of Bidens in Ukraine because she worked at the State Department during the Obama years. It's a very weird thing and a convoluted way of getting to this accusation. But let me take a look at Justin's write-up of it here in the Daily Beast. Getting a lot of play at the Daily Beast. Let me just start with it right here. Daytime talk show Outnumbered. I'm not familiar with it, but it obviously seems to exist. Became extremely tense, heated, and personal on Monday when Fox News host Steve Hilton accused Fox contributor and former State Department spokesperson Marie Harf of engaging in a cover-up of former Vice President Joe Biden's corruption in Ukraine. How do we get to this crazy spot? Here's the answer. Moments after House committees released transcripts of the closed-door testimony of 2 impeachment witnesses, and that's really the big news of the day, but it's getting covered, from I guess, gavel to gavel coverage everywhere else, though there are definitely some aspects of those transcripts we're going to have to cover today and the rest of the week. But anyway, moments after these transcripts were released, Hilton, who served as the lone male co-host of the Fox News female-centric panel show, I guess that's the outnumbered part, went full deep state conspiracy theorist, insisting that the intelligence bureaucracy is protecting Joe Biden. I would say, I mean, he goes even beyond just mere conspiracy theorist. He goes like full Unabomber in this. It's really amazing. Embracing Trump world's narrative that Biden pushed for a Ukrainian prosecutor to be ousted in order to disappear charges against the company his son worked for, Hilton basically alleged that Biden and former Secretary of State John Kerry were both involved in corruption. What essentially happens here, by the way, in case we don't make it through, the long story short on this is that this Hilton guy is essentially, he on this show and Republicans generally are finding that they're just really not getting serious traction outside of Trump supporting maniacs for their theory, for the idea that Joe Biden actively pushed to get rid of the Ukrainian prosecutor general, not because the entire world wanted him gone because of his inaction in prosecuting corruption cases, but instead because he was investigating Burisma, and Joe Biden's son Hunter was on the board of Burisma. I mean, even that story, it just really isn't a very compelling one. And it falls apart as soon as you realize, well, one, there wasn't really actually any investigation underway of Burisma. There had been an investigation initiated years before, and it was closed. And it was closed before Hunter Biden ever joined the board, et cetera, et cetera. But they're really not getting anywhere. So it's just like Trump. He just sort of ups the ante and makes the things sound more outrageously corrupt to see if he can get anybody to buy in. If I can't get you to believe that Biden targeted this prosecutor in order to protect Hunter, then obviously what I'll have to do is blurt out, well, how about this? In this segment, and I guess I can't play the whole thing, it's about a minute and 50 seconds, but he says, well, essentially he just charges, well, Biden actually, not only was he just trying to help Hunter avoid, well, it wasn't even that. It wasn't they were investigating Hunter. They weren't investigating, but they thought they should be investigating somehow, 2 years after the fact, Burisma, and that would somehow spread to Burisma board member Hunter Biden, and that would somehow spread to Joe Biden. But that wasn't interesting or exciting or correct or sexy enough to get enough people to pay attention. So Hilton ups the ante and says, well, what Joe Biden was really doing, in addition to helping Burisma get the investigation dropped, the United States government was funneling taxpayer money directly to Burisma. The U.S. government was paying Burisma. Now, I've never heard that one before, and I think the most anybody ever even tried to accuse Biden of in this conspiracy theory was helping his son, the company his son worked for, avoid a renewed investigation. There never was, to this point, that had crept out from underneath the right-wing rocks where this stuff germinated, nothing that said that taxpayer money was going to subsidize Burisma in any way. That U.S. taxpayer money was being sent to Ukraine, and Ukraine was handing money over to Burisma. No one charged that, but Hilton just throws that out there in this crazy segment. Well, maybe you'll be interested in this. Biden funneled taxpayer money to Burisma, and then people said, well, no, they didn't do that. And even if they did, I guess that's not very interesting. Oh, yeah, well, Burisma gave the money to Hunter Biden. How about that? So Joe Biden was forcing the United States government to pay Burisma so that Burisma could pay Hunter Biden. And the thing is, here is this Marie Harf. She's a former State Department employee, apparently, and she's just like, no, this didn't happen. I was there. I know this didn't happen. We were making things up. Well, he gives it one more shot. All right, well, guess what? John Kerry, when he was Secretary of State, he oversaw this. So he was also doing this. And as a matter of fact, even if people then said, what about, who cares? John Kerry, what does he have to do with anything? Well, John Kerry's former chief of staff also went to work in Ukraine and may or may not have been on the board of Burisma. And so the money that wasn't actually being sent from the United States government to Burisma was then not also being passed on to John Kerry's chief of staff directly, but I want you to think that it was. And again, no, none of this happened. Anyway, I guess Hilton gets frustrated to the point with this Marie Harf saying, I was at the State Department. This didn't happen. He just turns and says, aha, then you were in on it. This is like, as Bill put it, like the personification of the crazy uncle at Thanksgiving, right? He gives you his conspiracy theory. You're not buying it. He makes it worse. You're not buying it. He makes it even incredibly worse by making up more crap. And no, it's just not happening. And, so then he finally says, well, you must be the one who is, who's perpetuating this conspiracy. You're in on it. That's why you're saying it didn't happen. You were at the State Department. You were actively a part of it. And I accuse you. And this is a co-host of his on the show. I mean, it's really that nutty. So, all right. I don't think that's any shorter than the article actually was, but it's really amazing. You should take a look at it, see for yourself. Here's the quotes in which Hilton lays this stuff out. Embracing Trump world's narratives that Biden pushed for a Ukrainian prosecutor to be ousted in order to disappear those charges, right? Hilton basically alleged that Biden and former Secretary of State John Kerry were both involved in corruption. The only real corruption allegation is against Joe Biden, Hilton declared. And did he have an English accent? I think I heard that part. Let me play a little bit of this.
And that's what you have now.
Here he is.
That's why we shouldn't take it seriously. And further, these people inside the bureaucracy, the other thing they're doing is protecting Joe Biden, because the only real corruption allegation here is against Joe Biden. He was in charge of Ukraine policy. He supervised billions of dollars of aid that went from the U.S. taxpayer to Ukraine. Much of that went to Burisma.
You hear that? I mean, that's what a vague. It's utterly without foundation. But basically, billions of dollars went to the government of Ukraine. Much of that went to Burisma, as he says, or I say Burisma, but maybe Burisma is the better pronunciation. I don't know. He's English and he's bald as well, so I guess we're supposed to take that to mean something. But note, by the way, you can't take him seriously. He's not wearing a tie. He is wearing a jacket, but he's wearing some sort of collarless T-shirt thing underneath there. Look, I don't know what that French pirate thing is that he's wearing, but okay. Anyway. That's his allegation, his baseless allegation. Billions of dollars went from the United States government to Ukraine, and I'm not certain that it did. He may be talking in units that just weren't the case. We do frequently provide billions of dollars in foreign aid to various countries. I don't know if we were giving at that level to the Ukrainians, given that right now there's still a fight over the question of whether or not the aid that was released for the Trump administration had held up for Ukraine and then claims to have released only totals about $400 million. So I don't know that there were units of billions or that there were several, multiple, he uses the plural, billions of dollars, and much of it went to Burisma. I don't think so. I don't think any of it went to Burisma. It's a huge leap, but he's just blurting it out. That's what Fox News, I guess, is all about here. Right, so how much, he says, supervised billions of dollars of aid that went from the taxpayers, U.S. taxpayers to Ukraine. Much of that went to a gas company paying his son. He says Burisma. How much money did Joe Biden channel to his son's business is the accusation he's making. He went on to accuse Kerry of channeling money to Ukraine, calling on Ukraine to look into the former senator. That too, huh? And then Hilton finished his rant by claiming that Kerry's former aide used a position at Burisma to funnel more money to U.S. lawmakers in an effort to shape foreign policy, an accusation that prompted Harf to jump in. There's no evidence that anything you said is true. I worked at the State Department then, Harf exclaimed. And then the big turn. Well, you're covering up the corruption too. You defend it, Hilton fired back, causing Harf, now a Democratic strategist, to shout, "Are you kidding me?" Although that should have been, "Are you effing kidding me?" I think. But she didn't do it. She had restraint. "I am on this couch with you covering the news," she added. "Please don't accuse me of covering something up." And that's as milquetoast a pushback as you can get. And of course, he just went on. "You are," insisted Hilton, who hosts Fox's The Next Revolution, "because you are saying there's no evidence I've just given you." And that's probably the second most amazing part of the whole thing is she says there's no evidence, and he says there is evidence. I just told you that I think it's true. It's essentially, I told you I think it's true. That's the evidence. Therefore, there's evidence. As Harf once again pushed back, saying she was there at the time and there was no evidence, Fox News anchor Harris Faulkner interjected to toss the broadcast to live coverage of remarks by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff. Later on in the show, the two would continue their debate, with Hilton wondering how much Ukrainian aid during the Obama years, quote, ended up in the bank account of Burisma, unquote, while Harf reiterated that there was no evidence of wrongdoing and he was just, quote, making insinuations. You can say lying your ass off. It's all right. You should try that. Fox News did not immediately respond to a request for comment on a Fox News host accusing a colleague of corruption. But yeah, this was, one of the more amazing displays that I've ever seen. And I don't know, I just thought you should at least be aware of it. Although Sponson, our Twitter friend Sponson, chimed in to note, using Matthew Gertz's tweet on the subject to illustrate his point. Gertz had tweeted, "This is totally bonkers," and also, let me read what Sponson is saying first, and then Gertz's tweet supports it afterwards. Sponson was saying, "Trump has already endorsed the totally false U.S. taxpayer money to Burisma line. So this vicious attack on the Fox News colleague was presidentially sanctioned. She was in the way of a newly Trump-approved narrative." And he includes Gertz's tweet here that says, "This is totally bonkers." And also, last night the president approvingly quote tweeted Hilton's call for Rudy Giuliani to, quote, redirect your corruption investigation efforts to focus on how much U.S. taxpayer aid went to Burisma. Trump added, "Good point." Very interesting. So I guess this is, the good point Trump tweet includes a Fox clip. Again, here is Steve Hilton once again in the sport coat and t-shirt, collarless t-shirt look, along with the hairless head thing. The Next Revolution on November 3rd, that would have been Sunday, tweeting, "Rudy Giuliani, please, can you redirect your corruption investigation efforts to focus on how much U.S. taxpayer aid went to a Ukrainian company that was paying Joe Biden's son while Joe Biden was in charge of the aid." So that's the direction they're going. That's what they're trying to get to here. And I guess it would be important just to keep you up to speed on where the conspiracy theorists are trying to go next so that you can stay ahead of it. I don't see that they're getting any traction with it, but you never know. And I would hate for something even dumber than the original Biden conspiracy theory to gain any currency. It's really just, it's as gross as it gets to just make it up. And, this isn't working, so we need to make this sexier. Okay, fine. Taxpayer money was being stolen by Burisma. No one to this point has made any allegation whatsoever that there was any government support from Ukraine for Burisma, much less that there was governmental support from the United States. And I guess you could make the money is fungible kind of argument and claim that any taxpayer money that went to Ukraine is fungible for any dollar or any amount of money that Ukraine may or may not have spent in direct or indirect subsidies to or paid in exchange for services from Burisma, and try and do it that way. But no, that doesn't really hold up ordinarily. Anyway, as I said, lots of other discussion today and yesterday about the released transcripts, and there are I think I've got a couple of pieces on highlights from the proceedings and the hot spots in the Marie Yovanovitch interviews, depositions. Let's see, there's a Politico piece. There is the full transcript that got released, which is several hundred pages long. And somewhere is, here we are, the House Intelligence Committee's excerpts from the Yovanovitch depositions, I guess what they feel are the most important bits and pieces, and we can then comb through the Twitter feed from yesterday's discussion of it and people reading through it, the reporters who read through the entire deposition and tried to pick out the hot spots. Here's the committee's choice cuts, I guess, from this beginning here. They don't always indicate exactly where things are coming from inside of this or caption it with what we're talking about. But this first excerpt is just sort of starts cold. Question. Also on page 4 at the top, President Trump said, the ambassador from the United States, the woman, this would be the transcript of the phone call with Zelensky, I guess. The ambassador from the United States, the woman, was bad news. And the people she was dealing with in the Ukraine were bad news. So I just wanted to let you know that. Do you see that? Yes. So they're asking now Yovanovitch about the transcript that has that quote in it, the non-transcript transcript. Yes, she sees it. Well, what was your reaction when you saw that is the question. Again, I hate to be repetitive, but I was shocked. I mean, I was very surprised that President Trump would, first of all, that I would feature repeatedly in a presidential phone call. But secondly, that the president would speak about me or any ambassador in that way to a foreign counterpart. At the bottom of that same page, President Trump says, well, she's going to go through some things. What did you understand that to mean? And she says, I don't know what it meant. I was very concerned. I still am. Did you feel threatened? Yes. Very important part of all this. I thought that was pretty amazing myself. Just hearing her react, or through the transcript anyway, hearing her react to a report that the president of the United States is telling the president of Ukraine she's going to go through some things. Yeah, okay, great. In late 2018, the report here reads, Ukrainian officials informed Ambassador Yovanovitch about Rudy Giuliani's plans to target her. This appears on page 27 and 28 of the Yovanovitch deposition transcript. Question. When did you first become aware that Rudy Giuliani had an interest in or was communicating with anyone in Ukraine? Answer. Probably around November or December timeframe of 2018. And describe those circumstances when you first learned about it. She answers, basically, it was people in the Ukrainian government who said that Mr. Lutsenko, the former prosecutor general, was in communication with Mayor Giuliani and that they had plans and that they were going to, do things, including to me. Question. So you first heard about it from Ukrainian officials? Answer. That's correct. And that's bad, really, for our diplomats serving overseas. In the same time period, Ambassador Yovanovitch learned that Rudy Giuliani met with Yuri Lutsenko, the prosecutor general of Ukraine, who was looking to, quote, hurt her in the U.S. Pages 31 and 32 here. And from your staff members or your own conversations, what did you come to learn about Mr. Giuliani's interest in Ukraine? Her answer, that basically there had been a number of meetings between Mr. Lutsenko and Mayor Giuliani, and that they were looking, I should say, that Mr. Lutsenko was looking to hurt me in the U.S. I couldn't imagine what that was, but, now I see. What do you see now? Well, that I'm no longer in Ukraine. So the hurt was get her removed as ambassador to Ukraine. Mr. Lutsenko began spreading falsehoods about Ambassador Yovanovitch after she continued to press for reforms at his office, the prosecutor general's office, that he failed to implement. That found in her transcript, page 32 through 34. Begins with her answer to a unknown question. You can look it up in the full transcript. She says, so I think there was Mr. Lutsenko was not pleased that we continued at the embassy to call for cleaning up the PGO, the Prosecutor General's office, and he came into office with, 3 goals. One was to reform the office. One was to prosecute those who killed the innocent people on the Maidan during the Revolution of Dignity. And one was to prosecute money laundering cases to get back the $40 billion plus that the previous president and his cronies had absconded with. None of those things were done. And we thought those were great goals, and we wanted him to encourage him to continue with those goals. That did not happen. And so we continued to encourage him, and I don't think he really appreciated it. What he wanted from the U.S. Embassy was to set up meetings with the Attorney General, with the Director of the FBI, etc., and he would say, I have important information for them. As perhaps many of you know, there are, usual processes for that kind of thing. We don't have principals meet, and the foreign principal springs new information that may or may not be valid on an American cabinet member. We just don't do that. And so what we kept on encouraging him to do was meet with the legal attaché, the FBI at the embassy. That is precisely why we have the FBI in countries overseas, to work with host country counterparts and get information, whatever that information might be, develop cases, etc. He didn't want to share that information, and now I think I understand that information was falsehoods about me. Question, what falsehoods about you? Well, for example, as I mentioned in the testimony, in the statement, the opening statement, that I gave him a do not prosecute list, a list of individuals that he should not touch. And did you do that? No. Interesting. Another really amazing thing, and a great piece of information in there about why, what normal processes they actually have in place and why they have them. If someone in the Ukraine, if law enforcement in Ukraine actually had information about corruption among American officials, there are official channels through which you can convey that information. You don't have to say, I need a meeting with the United States Attorney General in order to tell him. You tell the FBI attaché, and the FBI attaché will vet the information and report back to Washington about whether or not they think a further investigation is warranted, or if it's information of value to an ongoing investigation in the United States. Although, I guess if you had legitimate information about corruption of the ambassador, you could see that might be somewhat tricky. But again, the answer there isn't asking for a direct meeting with the Attorney General of the United States. The job of the ambassador there is to make sure that those sorts of meetings don't happen without knowing exactly what the Attorney General is going to be presented with. No surprises in meetings like that. The next highlight they pick out here, in February 2019, after communicating with Rudy Giuliani about Vice President Biden in the 2016 election, Ukrainian Minister of the Interior Arsen Avakov expressed concerns to Ambassador Yovanovitch that getting into U.S. politics would be a dangerous place for Ukraine to be. Let's take a look at this section. The question here posed to her, what were his concerns as expressed to you? He thought it was very dangerous that Ukraine, since its independence, has had bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans all these years, and that the start kind of getting into U.S. politics, into U.S. domestic politics, was a dangerous place for Ukraine to be. Why did he think that he would be getting into U.S. domestic politics by speaking with Mr. Giuliani? Well, he told me that because of what you had mentioned before, the issue of the Black Ledger, Mr. Manafort's resignation from the Trump campaign as a result, and looking into that and how did all of that come about? The issue of whether, it was Russia collusion or whether it was really Ukraine collusion. That's, I guess, the origin of that thought here. Or whether it was really Ukraine collusion. And, looking forward to the 2020 election campaign and whether this would somehow hurt former Vice President Biden. I think he felt that was just very dangerous terrain for another country to be in. I'd have to agree. It's a bad place, and it's smart, good instinct for Ukrainians to want to stay out of. This section continues a little bit. And, of course, more of the highlights from the committee's point of view can be looked into after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'm taking a look through the rest of this transcript highlights. There certainly are an awful lot of them, and I'm wondering whether it's something we're going to get all the way through or not. Maybe we ought to read the top line conclusion of each of these things that the transcripts actually help illustrate, more so than reading through line by line. Let's see. The rest of this one is about Rudy Giuliani. After communicating with Rudy Giuliani about Vice President Biden and the 2016 election, Ukrainian Minister of Interior Arsen Avakov expressed concerns to Yovanovitch that getting into U.S. politics would be a dangerous place for the Ukraine to be. For Ukraine, no the, to be. And that illustrated by the exchange, and a little bit more of that exchange that we didn't get to read. Ambassador Yovanovitch stated that Minister Avakov, I don't know if that's Avakov or Avakov, warned her that he was very concerned about Mr. Giuliani and, quote, told me I really needed to watch my back. Interesting development there, too. Next up, Mr. Giuliani sought to, this is an interesting part, I thought. Mr. Giuliani sought to override a visa denial for former Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin, whom consular officials determined was ineligible based on his, quote, known corrupt activities, unquote, by claiming to the White House and the State Department that Ambassador Yovanovitch was improperly blocking the visa. You see what's happening here? Viktor Shokin apparently seeks a visa to come to the United States. Now, as it happens, they would have disallowed it anyway, because, as they said here, of his known corrupt activities. In other words, it's one of those things, I guess, being connected to the oligarchs and corruption will get you your visa request denied by the U.S. consulate. And Shokin, I guess, wanted to go to the United States. Well, here's the interesting thing. They ask on your visa application, why do you want to go to the United States? And he said, tourist visa, I want to go and visit my children. He says that he has kids living in the United States. He wants to go visit them. That's the reason he puts down. But I guess essentially the consular services division says, no, regardless, I understand, I can appreciate your desire to visit the kids, and it would otherwise be a relatively harmless visit. But no, you are known to be involved in corrupt activities, and we're denying you your visa. We don't think that there's a valid reason for you to come to the United States. We don't want you there. We don't want to run the risk. You're a persona non grata here, like a sanctioned person would be denied a visa as well. So it's denied. Now, Rudy Giuliani, world's greatest lawyer, immediately intervenes, but in so doing undermines Shokin's claims. Remember, Shokin said, I'm going to visit my kids who live there in the United States. Giuliani calls up and says, I want the decision to deny him the visa overridden. It's very important that he come to the United States because he's going to come to the United States to meet with me and provide me with information about corruption at the embassy, including your corruption, Ambassador Jovanovic. So you're denying the visa to Shokin because you want to cover up your own corruption. Of course, she's like, I had nothing to do with the denial of the visa. That's the call at the consular division, and they were going to deny him anyway because he was connected with known corrupt activities. But then he lied to us, I guess. All we have is the information that people who apply for the visa fill out. He said he was coming to see his kids. I didn't necessarily believe that was the reason he was coming to the United States, but I had no reason to disbelieve that was the reason until you, super lawyer, called up and said, well, that's just cover. The real reason he's coming to the United States is to plot with me, to collude with me, Rudy Colludi, on interfering in the 2020 elections by giving me dirt on Joe Biden. I mean, what a great lawyer he is, this Giuliani. I mean, just continuing the tradition. It's really pretty amazing. And we learn all sorts of fun things about how the consular services actually work and what forms they fill out when they are refusing someone a visa, et cetera, et cetera. But really kind of amazing. And an amazing accusation and an amazing spilling of the beans, once again, by Rudy Colludi. Yeah, we need a visa for Shokin so he can come here and collude with us on the 2020 elections. Duh. Ambassador Jovanovic spoke with senior State Department officials about Mr. Giuliani's activities in Ukraine, but they did not stop his efforts. That illustrated on pages 270 and 71 of this transcript. Ambassador Jovanovic spoke with senior State Department officials who understood that claims made about her in a series of articles published in The Hill in March of 2019, that's John Solomon's work, were a fabrication and outrageous. So a lot of this is about Jovanovic speaking with State Department officials about the smearing of her name going on at the behest of, well, Trump, ultimately, being perpetrated by Giuliani and partners there in Ukraine and at home in the United States. When Ambassador Jovanovic sought advice from Gordon Sondland, I don't know why she thought that was a good idea, but she didn't know yet what a corrupt bastard he was. That's the U.S. ambassador to the European Union. He, surprisingly enough, recommends, yeah, you're in trouble with the president, essentially, but you can save yourself, and here's how you do it. He recommended that she tweet her praise of President Trump. That's actually a short and rather amazing exchange. So we can read that here. The question here, and what did Mr. Sondland say when you talked to him about this topic? He hadn't been aware of it, she says, that the story had shifted. And he said, you need to go big or go home. What a fantastic and helpful phrase that is. You need to, tweet out there that you support the president and that all these are lies and everything else. And, obviously that was advice. It was advice that I did not see how I could implement in my role as an ambassador and as a foreign service officer. In other words, it essentially would be, if not breaking actual rules or laws, certainly breaking the norms for foreign service officers posted overseas to just start randomly tweeting praise of the president. But okay. Did he actually say, the question says, support President Trump? Was that his advice? Did you publicly say something to that effect? Answer, yes. He may not have used the words support President Trump, but he said, the president. Well, maybe you don't know him personally, but you know the sorts of things that he likes. Go out there battling aggressively and, praise him or support him. It's pretty lame advice, but it probably does work for Trump. But, it's an improper role for a foreign service officer, period. Ambassador Jovanovic in the next section was told that State Department officials were hesitant to issue a statement supporting her. Right? She's saying, they're smearing me, they're spreading these falsehoods. Why don't you stop these guys from doing this. She complains to the State Department brass that Giuliani is out there undermining her. There's more out here. I don't think they've discussed it overtly in the sections we've read, but Donald Trump Jr., this is a really problematic place. Donald Trump Jr. is tweeting out attacks against her, too, and I think she discusses that in one or another of the next segments here, but we'll jump ahead to this point. What do you do with that? I mean, think about how problematic it is for the grown child of the president, particularly one who shares his name, that Donald Trump Jr. is tweeting out attacks, personal attacks, alleging corruption against the United States ambassador in Ukraine. Like, remember, I mean, it partially violates the whole norm about, no criticism of the president while he's overseas, right? Politics stops at the water's edge. Imagine somebody who's there permanently overseas. A person who just happens to be named Donald Trump Jr. is tweeting attacks. What is the government of Ukraine supposed to think about the person who is representing the United States there as ambassador? How can she get anything done? She's been completely undermined because Trump's adult son is tweeting out these attacks, and he's not in government either. And even if he was, you kind of get the sense that he's not somebody who would necessarily worry very much about following the rules, especially, my dad's president, he'll fire you. Who knows what his thinking is on this. But you have the namesake of the president tweeting this stuff out, and there's no mechanism for dealing with it. And that's largely because no one ever contemplated that as a possibility. I mean, imagine for just a second, and we're all tired of the what if Obama situations, but imagine Obama's daughters tweeting out attacks against individual U.S. ambassadors or members of the administration. How would you put a stop to something like that? I mean, it's insane that's happened. I guess the closest we've ever come to a sitting president having an out of control and mouthy adult child speaking out of turn, maybe George W. Bush during George H.W. Bush's presidency might have done something like that. But he limited his mouthiness to, internal family problems. We've never seen the children of a sitting president making political commentary like this. Anyway, so poor Ambassador Yovanovitch is appealing for help to the State Department brass. And again, in a normal presidency, you would have a Secretary of State would be concerned with standing up for his people and might actually, confront the president in whatever gentle ways secretaries of state usually confront presidents and say, we have a real problem here. It's creating a morale problem in the State Department. And the normal presidents would understand that immediately and say, we'll work for a way to represent our views here, but we'll back off on the rhetoric a little bit. Yeah, this was out of control. But the State Department brass ultimately realizes that they are either unable or unwilling to make this statement of support and simply say, this is out of line, or without even saying that, just saying, we have full confidence in Ambassador Yovanovitch and her ability to do the job. And they won't even do that. And why not? Here, this section illustrates this. Yovanovitch was told State Department officials were hesitant to issue a statement supporting her because, quote, the rug would be pulled out, unquote, from under them by President Trump. How so? Well, here, let me give you this exchange. I was told, she says, there was caution about any kind of statement because it could be undermined. I'm sorry, it could what? It could be undermined. The statement could be undermined? See, it's incredible to them to even contemplate this. By whom? The president. And now there's an ellipsis, something missing here, something left out, but they pick up with the conversation again. And can you explain again why you understood that the State Department could not issue a statement of support? What I was told was that there was concern that the rug would be pulled out from under the State Department if they put something out publicly. By whom? The president. And it's, I think, discussed in another section somewhere here as to exactly what they're talking about. But basically they're saying this president is able to undo all of the work that we would do in putting together a statement of support for you with a single tweet. If we say we have full confidence in Ambassador Yovanovitch's ability to do the job, all he has to do is pick up his phone, having heard about this, and tweet out, "No, we don't." And all our work is undone. And in addition to our work being undone, unspoken here is we'll be called on the carpet and yelled at by the president for saying this contradictory thing. The truth, or well, what we had hoped was the truth anyway, that the State Department supports State Department employees in their mission. Anyway, the next section here, in March 2019, Ambassador Yovanovitch transmitted a classified email at the request of Undersecretary of State David Hale, documenting the disinformation campaign against her. So that's interesting too. And so Undersecretary of State David Hale makes the request. Send me information documenting what these lunatics are doing about trying to discredit you here in Ukraine. In two phone calls on April 24th and 25th of 2019, Director General of the Foreign Service, Carol Perez, informed Ambassador Yovanovitch that there was, quote, a lot of nervousness on the 7th floor of the State Department and up the street, White House, I guess, that she should board the next plane home to Washington. That also is very interesting. And the exchange, I think, is somewhat telling as well. The question here, what did she say to you? I guess we're talking about Carol Perez here. Well, in the first call, which happened at 9:45 in the evening, Kiev time, she said she was giving me a heads up that things were going wrong, kind of off the track. And she wanted to give me a heads up. She didn't know what was happening, but there was a lot of nervousness on the 7th floor and up the street. What did she mean by up the street? Answer, the White House. And then later on, she called me about an hour later. So now it's 1 a.m. in the Ukraine. And she said the Ukraine. And what did she say to you then? She said that there was a lot of concern for me. Now check this part out. That I needed to be on the next plane home to Washington. And I was like, what? What happened? And she said, I don't know, but this is about your security. You need to come home immediately. You need to come home on the next plane. There's actually an insinuation that there's some sort of physical threat to her well-being, and she needed to get up now at 1 a.m. and get on a plane back to Washington. That doesn't sound very good, and it doesn't sound like the sort of thing that a president should be involved in conveying to his own ambassador. When Ambassador Yovanovitch returned to Washington shortly after the April calls, Acting Assistant Secretary of State Philip T. Rieker informed her that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, quote, was no longer able to, unquote, protect her from President Trump. She's just gotten physical threat. She arrives back in Washington. The state Secretary of State says, sorry, can't protect you from President Trump, who incites violence against his political enemies. Wow, that is pretty amazing as well. Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan informed Ambassador Yovanovitch that she had, quote, done nothing wrong, but the president had, quote, lost confidence in her. And he never had any confidence in anything in Ukraine, and we can read a bit about that perhaps later on. Counselor to the State Department Ulrich Breckbull, remember his name, who had been the point person for Ambassador Yovanovitch's recall, refused to accept Ambassador Yovanovitch's request for a meeting. So very interesting as well. She comes back and says, I was called home. Someone tell me what this is about? Nope. The smear campaign and social media postings questioning Ambassador Yovanovitch's loyalty, quote, cut the ground out from underneath, unquote, U.S. diplomatic efforts. That's an important point. What was the upshot of all this nonsense? The United States had no ability to affect policy in Ukraine during this entire episode. Ambassador Yovanovitch was shocked to read the White House's record of the July 25th, 2019 call between Trump and Zelensky and felt threatened by the president's statement that, quote, she's going to go through some things, right? That's another amazing reiteration, I guess, of what we found on the cover there. I guess on the cover they just stuck that out there because they thought that was the most amazing thing. And then they wind up their report of the highlights, the excerpts from Yovanovitch's deposition by including that one last, batting cleanup and all of that. It's rather amazing, and really watching the reporters figure this out was really kind of amazing too. Oh, by the way, one other point about Giuliani trying to intervene in Shokin's visa application thing, I thought was interesting, by the way. Remember that it is the White House's claim that they weren't targeting Biden per se. They were just simply deeply, genuinely concerned with corruption in Ukraine in general. I've illustrated the absurdity of the point before by saying, $40 billion was stolen by the previous Ukrainian administration in the biggest act of corruption that country and probably any other had ever seen in terms of the amount of money actually stolen from the country. But for whatever reason, Donald Trump decides that he's going to start with this $50,000 board seat as the definition of corruption. That's the place to start investigating corruption in Ukraine. But forget all of that, because here is the United States government rejecting the visa application of Viktor Shokin on the basis of corruption. And Giuliani's first activity here on that front is, fighting on Shokin's behalf to get that reversed. We're so concerned about corruption in Ukraine that we're going to get involved in a consular decision and try and reverse their refusal to allow a corrupt individual from Ukraine to visit the United States. That's how we treat corruption. That's our big concern of corruption in Ukraine. Bring them here so they can collude with us to steal the 2020 election. How fantastic is that? Anyway, I just thought that was all pretty amazing. The Republicans, of course, spent the day complaining, and the only thing I guess that they could come up with, because the transcripts are so bad for them, is the fact that some other transcripts were not yet released and were set to be released today. But yesterday, they got to run around saying, how come they haven't released all the transcripts? What are they hiding? What are they hiding? Which is an awfully short-lived play, because, of course, today they will be releasing them, and then we'll find out what they were, quote-unquote, hiding, and that it was probably better for Republicans the longer that stuff was kept hidden than actually releasing it and letting us all know exactly how horrifically corrupt they all are. All right, let's see. There was, that reminded me that there was somewhere in here, in Pocket, a piece that attempted to explain Trump's insistence that Ukraine was terribly corrupt always, and why he had this here it is. I found it here. The Washington Post piece here. A presidential loathing for Ukraine is at the heart of the impeachment inquiry. Maybe this does help us, not only through the last minutes of the show, but help us get another piece of background information that might give some sort of sense of what demented logic Trump has been using all this time. A presidential loathing for Ukraine is at the heart of the impeachment inquiry, is the headline on the piece by Greg Jaffe and Josh Dawsey. This from back on Saturday, November 2nd. Three of President Trump's top advisors met with him in the Oval Office in May, determined to convince him that the new Ukrainian leader was an ally deserving of U.S. support. They had barely begun their pitch when Trump unloaded on them, according to current and former U.S. officials familiar with the meeting. In Trump's mind, the officials said Ukraine's entire leadership had colluded with the Democrats to undermine his 2016 presidential campaign. which normal people would say, I won and I can put that behind me now, et cetera, but no, not him. They tried to take me down, Trump railed. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, the senior member of the group, assured Trump that the new Ukrainian president was different, a reformer in Trump's mold, who had even quoted President Ronald Reagan in his inaugural address, for which the three advisors had been present. And wow, that's so meaningful. But okay, whatever. But the harder they pushed in the Oval Office, the more Trump resisted. They are horrible, corrupt people, Trump told them. What kind of attitude is that for anybody to have, much less the President of the United States? It's amazing. So far, a dozen witnesses have testified before House lawmakers since the closed-door impeachment inquiry began 1 month ago. One theme that runs through almost all of their accounts is Trump's unyielding loathing of Ukraine, which dates to his earliest days in the White House, which of course actually dates from getting instructions from Putin. That's who loathes Ukraine and who taught him to do the same. We could never quite understand it, a former senior White House official said of Trump's view of the former Soviet Republic, also saying that much of it stemmed from the president's embrace of conspiracy theories. There were accusations that they had somehow worked with the Clinton campaign. There were accusations they'd hurt him. He just hated Ukraine. White House officials did not respond to requests for comment on this. Trump's animosity to Ukraine ran so deep and was so resistant to the typical foreign policy and treaties about the need to stand by allies that senior officials involved in Ukraine policy concluded that the only way to overcome it was to set up an Oval Office meeting with Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Once the two presidents actually sat down together, President Trump would quickly conclude that President Zelensky is a charismatic politician who enjoys the support of his people and is worthy of U.S. support. Kurt Volker, who subsequently resigned as special advisor on Ukraine, told Congress. U.S. and Ukrainian officials would spend months in pursuit of a Trump-Zelensky meeting. In their fruitless attempts to make it happen, Perry, Volker, and Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, would encourage the Ukrainians to accede to demands by Trump and his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, that they open investigations that would benefit Trump politically. Ultimately, Trump, in a July 25th phone call, would press the Ukrainian president directly for dirt on former Vice President Joe Biden. You know the whole bit. I would like you to do us a favor, right? The roots of that request trace back to the earliest days of the Trump presidency when Zelensky was still a Ukrainian sitcom actor and Trump's top foreign policy advisors were trying to make sense of Trump's distaste for Kiev and map out a Ukraine policy. In the fall of 2017, Trump was set to meet with then Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko at the United Nations in New York. At the time, U.S. officials were working to convince Trump that Ukraine, locked in a long war with Russia-backed forces, was worthy of American support. Then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson told Volker that he would have about 45 seconds to brief Trump ahead of his meeting with Poroshenko. If Trump was interested in learning more, Tillerson said, the president would ask questions. Volker rushed through his pitch, according to former U.S. officials who, like others, spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive diplomatic topics. Trump then peppered Volker with his negative views of Ukraine, suggesting that it wasn't a real country. How do you like that? That it had always been a part of Russia, and that it was, quote, totally corrupt. Now, where would that information have come from, right? Putin, obviously. Inside the administration, Trump's top advisors debated the origins of this ill feeling. Some argued that Trump saw Ukraine as an impediment to better U.S. relations with Putin, who was angry about U.S. sanctions imposed on Moscow for its annexation of Crimea and for the Kremlin's ongoing support of pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. At the time of Trump's UN meeting with Poroshenko, U.S. officials were debating whether to sell anti-tank weapons to the Ukrainians. Skipping down a little bit more here, Trump's entire national security cabinet unanimously supported the idea of making the sale, but Trump hesitated. He kept saying it wasn't worth pissing off Russia and what a bad country Ukraine was, said the former senior White House official. Trump told his advisors that everyone, quote, everyone was telling him not to do it because it would anger Russia, the former official said, but in fact, his entire team was advising the opposite. Everyone was really saying, sell it. After months of delay, Trump finally approved the sale of weapons in December of 2017. But But it goes on and on about how long he's been saying this. What's interesting is that it's also offered up in parallel with a few other stories that people have dug up about Trump's interest in the earlier 2000s, before 2010, in doing an extensive amount of business in Ukraine, opening hotels and golf courses and resort facilities there. He didn't always think it was a horrible, corrupt place full of terrible, terrible people. But as soon as he became president and became closer, for whatever reason, with Vladimir Putin, he suddenly adopted Putin's views of this country that was trying to westernize, join NATO, and join the European Union and democratize itself. How amazing is that? That they've always been a part of Russia. They really haven't. But somebody must have told you that they were. I wonder who that might have been. Be right back after
From
this.
Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, Justice Putnam's up next with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Lots to say about the Virginia elections as well, thankfully. We largely ignored that. I have to go out and vote in them as well. More about the impeachment case. Plus, some news from around the world, as always, occupying the last segment of his show. Coming up next.